Latest thing today is this deputy has been fired. Talk to us about that process and why that decision was made.
Well, as you know, Friday we got information of a possible child abuse, and we of course immediately assigned deputies, and then shortly thereafter a detective to investigate it. And as the investigation went forward, we found out that there was enough information to make an arrest, and we did that. And you know, over the weekend the investigation continued, and Monday being a holiday, the first thing Tuesday morning when I came in, I was briefed personally by the detective investigating the case. And you know, I've got to give a little bit of kudos to that detective, because there aren't very many cases that are more difficult than an aggravated child abuse. And when the suspect is one of your coworkers, it makes it even more difficult. And he did a great job in giving an investigation to the criminal justice system that is going to be sufficient to ensure justice is served, in my opinion, this early in the stage. But after talking with him and getting some more specifics about what actually happened and you know, what the suspect said during the investigation, I felt that there was more than enough evidence to sever our working relationship with that deputy. So made the decision early Tuesday morning after getting back from the long weekend to go ahead and do that. Unfortunately, we weren't able to serve the paperwork on him until yesterday at late afternoon, and of course that made it official that he has been terminated.
What, you know, I know that you can't go into too many details, but what about this particular case of aggravated child abuse? When you got with that investigator, I got to imagine it was very upsetting. I mean, what new details did you learn when you met with him come Tuesday morning that maybe your office hadn't realized yet?
Well, you know, again, I can't go into a lot of details because, you know, it's still fairly early on in the investigation, and I don't want to do anything that might interfere with justice being served. However, I can tell you that even before the detective talked to the deputy, to the suspect, it was pretty evident that there was no way that it could have been an accident based on the evidence, which obviously you can draw your own conclusions that it was pretty serious. And when it gets to that level, the decision to terminate somebody from employment becomes very easy.
And your investigator, I mean, did he see the child's injury? What injuries? What was his reaction to seeing something like that?
Well, he was obviously, again, anytime a child's injured, even from an accident, it's something that tugs at your heartstrings. But these injuries were severe enough that really gave him pause, even a seasoned major crimes detective.
And your deputy initially denied it, and then?
Well, I think, you know, it's not uncommon for people in situations like this to try to mitigate or blame it on something else, or say it was an accident, or the child, you know, did it themselves and so forth. But as I said, from the evidence, I think the detective knew going into the interview that that was not going to be plausible.
Talk about, from your perspective, I saw a quote, this has got to be frustrating to you. This was one of your guys.
Frustrating and anger. I've said that the public has every right to be frustrated and angry, but I can tell you, but I can tell you that I don't think there's anybody more angry or frustrated than I am. It makes you shake your head. And even as late as this morning, I was meeting with some sergeants, and one of the sergeants is actually in charge of training in the detention center. And she had a level of frustration, because we always look and say, is there anything we could have done to prevent this? And one of the things she brought out is recently she'd been in charge of training that included mental health training, things like employee assistance programs and things that are available for individuals inside the organization to help cope with stress and so forth. So I even saw frustration on her part that she had given these tools, and you know, you can't force somebody to use those tools. So.
And we're going to look at his jacket, but no red flags, nothing that said this may not be somebody we want on the force.
No, that's another very frustrating part is we do a background that is virtually impossible to get through for the average citizen. I mean, we look at, you know, everything from their credit history to their criminal history. We talk to friends and family. We have a psychological test. We do a computer voice stress analyzer, a truth verification test on them. And obviously, had we seen anything in the background that concerned us, especially something that would lead to aggravated child abuse, we would have never considered that person. So to answer your question, there was nothing. And anybody I've talked to feels exactly the same way. The level of frustration that there wasn't anything that we saw that could have predicted this.
When you can't, you know, a lot of times hindsight is 20/20, so the saying goes, and you can look back and say, well, maybe this would have been a sign. In this instance, you're saying there was no sign. So how do you move forward? Is there any way you can possibly tweak training to maybe look for a sign, or?
Well, obviously, we never stop doing that. We never assume we have a perfect system. As I said, up to this point, we haven't found anything in this particular case. We're going to keep looking, and if anything surfaces, obviously we're going to make adjustments to ensure it doesn't happen again. But, you know, we recruit from the human race, and predicting human behavior is very, very difficult, particularly something like this.
Sheriff, we were up here a couple weeks ago for another situation. Haven't been up here for a while for these types of situations. Any comments as to what's going on here lately at the Sheriff's office?
Again, anger and frustration is about the only two words that come to mind. You know, we've had to deal with some internal issues lately. I guess the only thing I can say is I can assure the public that we're not going to shy away from them. We're going to hit them head on. We're going to deal with them, and we're going to move on. We're not going to try to sugarcoat it. We're not going to try to cover it up. We're just going to deal with it when it comes to the surface. And again, we're dealing with human beings, and we recruit from the human race, and they are imperfect creatures, and they're going to do things. Sometimes they're small and sometimes they're big, but when they do something wrong, we're going to take the appropriate action.